Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon, and today is Saturday, the 17th of February. This is the 134th day, 134th day since the attacks in South Israel by Hamas, and since Israel's war on Gaza began. My main updates today are from the Associated Press. It's kind of a summary of some of the main things that happened in the past week. I thought that might be helpful. There were a lot of details. In terms of the big picture, Israel is continuing its assault on Gaza, and that's why I said Israel's war on Gaza. They have said that they have the goal of eradicating Hamas. They are claiming that the Israeli government, Netanyahu's government, is claiming that the death of civilians is the fault of Hamas, even though the International Criminal Court sided with South Africa in its claim that Israel could be committing genocide in Gaza. And so in terms of Israel's ongoing offensive, the defense minister of Israel said yesterday that the country's military is pushing ahead with its planned offensive into Rafah. Rafah is the southernmost city. It's important to understand there have been incursions. Last weekend, there was the rescue of 2 hostages that also resulted in the death of a few dozen Palestinians. But Israel has said it's moving forward with its invasion into Rafah. A full-scale invasion has not started yet, but ground forces, as of yet, they are out of Rafah, but Israel is intending to move forward. He has not said when the offensive will begin, but that Israel's military will prepare a plan first to evacuate the estimated 1.4 million civilians who are crammed into that city on the Egyptian border. There have been growing expressions of concern around the world, repeated warnings by the US that Israel must come up with a, quote, credible evacuation plan. In Rafah, the situation is increasingly desperate. People don't have adequate food, water, electricity, and medical care. They have been under regular Israeli bombardment. So it's being bombed by the air, but the ground incursion fully into Rafah as of the recording of this video, midday Saturday East Coast time, has not yet begun. Israel says that it is targeting Hamas fighters, that it holds militants responsible for civilian casualties, as I just mentioned. The other news is that Israel's military has raided the Nasser hospital in Khan Yunis, the main hospital in the southern Gaza Strip. It says that it has evidence that Israeli hostages were being held there. No hostages have been found, but 100 militants, according to Israeli news, have been arrested, 20 of whom Israel is claiming to have been involved in the attacks that started the war. The offensive into Gaza has, according to the Associated Press, killed nearly 29,000 Palestinians, caused widespread destruction, displaced some 80+% of the population, and of course, sparked a catastrophic humanitarian crisis. It is still believed that there are about 100 hostages who remain alive in Gaza, and the death toll in Israel since the Hamas attacks on October 7th still is about 1,400 people. One of the big concerns, and you might have heard this in my reports earlier this week, is about the question of what's happening at the Egyptian border between Egypt and Rafah. So Egypt is worrying about spillover, and the ceasefire talks have also paused, or at least been stalled. So the upcoming offensive on Rafah has sparked warnings by Egypt. It's worried that the fighting will actually push Palestinian civilians into Sinai. And Egypt has even threatened to suspend its peace treaty with Israel. It has fortified a buffer zone on the border, and there's another wall that's been being built that was reported this week. We first heard about it by a human rights group in Sinai and then by the New York Times. The zone runs 5 kilometers, which is 3 miles deep from the border. It's meant to stop any potential breaches if the population does overrun the Rafah checkpoint. according to Egyptian officials. In terms of the ceasefire talks, they have been paused or at least stalled. They are being moderated by the US, Qatar, Egypt. They appear to be going nowhere. Hamas has said it will not release its remaining captives, about 100, until Israel withdraws from Gaza, releases a large number of Palestinian prisoners, including some who have been convicted of crimes against Israel. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that this is delusional, the idea that the war against Hamas will stop in exchange for the hostages. Netanyahu said Israel will continue to fight Hamas until its destruction. Just a reminder that many people have said Hamas is an ideology, that it will not be able to be destroyed. And so many people are questioning this idea of that Hamas's destruction being the only determination before Israel would stop its war. Netanyahu also said that international recognition of a Palestinian state would amount to rewarding terrorism. And France has said that it might go ahead and acknowledge a Palestinian state. Now, fighting with Hezbollah on the border between North Israel and South Lebanon has also heated up. There are tensions there. We've been following those since for the last several months. Rocket fire from Lebanon killed an Israeli soldier on Wednesday. Israel sent a drone strike that killed a Hezbollah commander and 2 other operatives in Lebanon. The next day, Israeli airstrikes killed 10 Lebanese civilians, and Hezbollah fired a salvo of rockets into northern Israel, threatening to expand the conflict. Just for context, Hezbollah is a political party and also a militia in Lebanon. They have a sizable rocket and infantry force. Commentators have said they are much, much more powerful than Hamas. Hezbollah has fought Israel to a standstill in the previous war in 2006. Hezbollah is backed by Iran and relies on Iran to pressure Israel, which is considered its arch enemy. They've been engaged in low-intensity fighting since the beginning of October, but both sides say they don't want a war, but there are constant fears that it could slip out of control. So Hezbollah and Israel are not formally at war, but things continue at their border. This morning, Secretary Blinken met with Israel's President Herzog in Munich, Germany. The secretary reaffirmed Israel's right to ensure that the terrorist attacks of October 7th might never be repeated. I would like to tell Secretary Blinken, and we have been telling the American government, that further military deterrence only creates more hatred and more resistance. And even the attacks throughout the broader Middle East have only empowered resistance movements, because those who feel like resistance against the occupation, which we believe in nonviolent resistance against the occupation, but those who are pursuing military resistance have never been more popular in the Arab world. And so anyway, Secretary Blinken and Herzog discussed efforts to secure the release of hostages, to achieve a humanitarian pause that would allow humanitarian assistance to get to civilians in Gaza. And Secretary Blinken reiterated that the U.S. would not support a ground operation without a, quote, credible and implementable plan for ensuring the safety of the more than 1 million people sheltering there, end quote. We've been pushing back on the administration to say a plan is inadequate. There's been so much rhetoric from the Biden administration telling Israel to, curb its number of civilian deaths, and that has just not happened. I saw this week on social media a report of how many Palestinians have been killed in Gaza every single day, except for, of course, the temporary ceasefire that happened mid-war. Secretary Blinken emphasized the need for parties to take feasible measures to protect civilian lives and to prevent the conflict from expanding. He also underscored the commitment of the U.S. to peace in the region and establishment of a Palestinian state with security guaranteed for Israel. I wanted to close with a ministry report that I received. This is from a ministry in Gaza, a Christian ministry. And this was a story from a mother about what life is like in Gaza. And I thought this was so profound. And to protect her and the ministry, I won't say where this came from, but this mother said this: a friend asked me what a perfect day would be for you. And again, this is a mother in Gaza. And she felt she needed to share her response with fellow believers around the world. I wish to wake up and find water coming from the tap so that I can wash my face and brush my teeth. I wish to wake up in pajamas rather than the clothes I've been wearing for the last 4 days. I hope to find cooking gas so that I can prepare coffee for me, for my husband, and milk for my children, and prepare lunch for them. And I hope to find vegetables. I long to taste the sweetness of fruit. We lost that deliciousness months ago. And to find wood to heat water for a shower, and to find my phone battery at 50% charged. I hope for bread enough to feed my son to the fullest. I wish there was warm water as I wash our clothes by hand. It's been a long time since we've been in this situation. I've cried. I found that hours and minutes are precious and did not know their value until they were lost. It doesn't matter. We're still alive. We're still here. People talk about how they hope when they die to be buried in the church cemetery and not in the cemetery of the unknown or in a mass grave. Last night, talking with my 9-year-old daughter before bed, while hearing the sound of explosions, she was smiling and she said, "I discovered that death is easier than traveling." Was she happy or sad when she said this? And as a mother, what should I say to her? Thank you for taking the time to listen, and thank you for your prayers.